morning. May I use special greeting? Good morning. Good morning. Oh, Andre. Good morning. Oh, yes. Good morning. Thank you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of all our delegates, first of all, we would like to thank Your Holiness for giving us this opportunity. This is the second dialogue that is being held here in Dharamsala. Without further delay, I would like to welcome all our Russian scientists, our guests from Russia, and the observers, the general public, and as well as those who are watching us live online. We have arranged for translation into English, Chinese, Russian, as well as in Tibetan as well. This second dialogue is organized by the Tibet Culture and Information Center, Office of Tibet, Moscow, Save Tibet Foundation in Russia, with the support of the Center of Consciousness Studies at Moscow State University, Institute of Philosophy, Russian Academy of Science. This conference will not be possible without the support of our sponsors. One of our sponsors who wish to remain anonymous. We would like to thank Stanislav Nikolsky. Also, we would like to thank Vladislav Svidlov, Vladimir Singliev, Dmitry Volkov, and we would like to thank all of you for your support during the first conference as well as the second conference. So without further delay, I would like to pass the floor to Professor Anokin, who will be moderating today's and tomorrow's sessions. Thank you very much.
I think I have a microphone. Thank you. Your Holiness, all of us would like to thank you cordially for invitation for this second dialogue, and please allow me to tell our idea about the plan of this dialogue. It is named Understanding the World. This is part of your definition of science from your book, The Universe in a Single Atom. And our idea, all of us read this book and were very impressed by the ideas and problems raised in this book on convergence of Western science and spirituality and Buddhist science. So our So our idea was to build this dialogue as a direct interaction of our Russian participants with Your Holiness on the number of ideas discussed in your book. We have discussed this book before. We had yesterday an intensive session with the Buddhist scholars and monks where we exchanged a number of questions or shared our ideas of what will be the most important points of studies and convergence. And for the next 2 days, for the 2 sessions, there are 10 of us, and in this row you can recognize people who had attended our first meeting a year ago. And in front, there are scientists who are coming to this dialogue for the first time. And the general idea is that each of us will have about 20-25 minutes to share some ideas and ask you some questions based on the ideas in your book. Today, the scientists who are for the first time will have the opportunity to discuss this with you. Would you like, please, to say a few opening words before we will start?
Okay. Okay. 배박하시 두 개. 두 개. 가. 배박. 뷰지 걸어 열어봐. 다잖아. 아저 translation 돼 열어봐다. 다다래. Then I'm 뛰어 말해. 어떻게 하면 되다. Then I think brothers and sisters, actually I believe 7 billion human beings are our brothers, sisters. I insist that because you see, a lot of problems which we are facing today, actually our own creation. Now some scientists say basic human nature is more compassionate. Yet, a lot of problems we created. Why? Our emotion. You see, on the basis of we and they. And then, you see, we, how should they, and with that, short-sighted. We forget we are part of the humanity, but we feel we are something special. Then in order to gain something to us, to we, and sometimes harming other. So destruction of your enemy, you consider it is your victory. In ancient time, maybe small community. Each community, more or less, is self-sufficient. Now today's world, east, west, north, south, everyone interrelated. And on top of that, environment issue, global warming. No sort of differences, nationality or religious belief. We, entire humanity, now facing some new problem. And then, a lot of, now this very moment, peaceful, calm. But same planet, same human being, like Yemen, Syria, some African state, killing each other, dying, young children, due to starvation or due to lack of medical facility. And then, worst thing is, in the name of different religious faith, killing each other. Now here, big contradiction. Basic human nature is more compassionate. A lot of problem, including killing our own creation. Why? We're too much short-sighted. And a lack of, I feel, the concept of sense of oneness of 7 billion human beings. And we are social animals. Individuals' future depend on rest of the community. Now today's community is entire 7 billion, same human community. So now, time come, we have to make every effort to educate people the sameness of humanity, and individual's future depend on the rest of the human being, rest of the world. So, too much self-centered attitude is, I think, the unrealistic view. The reality, everything interdependent. And then you, emotional level, you feel, I don't care about other. So long, you yourself, okay. That's narrow-minded, short-sighted, uneducated thinking. So now important is, time comes, we have to educate people. Just one world. And east, west, south, north, everything interrelated. So now, I think 1,000 years, different religious tradition always talks. I think basically oneness. For example, according to Christianity, is a one God, creator of whole world, one God. So try to teach us, entire human being, are brothers and sisters of children of one God, isn't it? We Buddhists always say, entire sentient being, samjaya tamje, samjaya tamje. But the reality, we also sometimes make the distinction, we and they. So therefore, although the all major religious tradition carried a message of love on the basis of the sense of oneness of entire sentient being, as far as Buddhism is concerned, entire sentient being. But over 1,000 years, these religious teaching there. But I feel the effect from these teaching seems to be limited. So now, important is education. So-called existing modern education, very much oriented about material value. So, as I mentioned earlier, the children, young age, you see, they're still very fresh, the compassionate feeling as a part of our nature. We are social animal. Individual survival depend on others' care. Particularly as soon as we're born, mother's taking care, mother's care. Without that, we die, and including mother's milk. So at the basic human nature, like that. And then more important, now scientists say, constant anger, constant fear is actually eating our immune system. More compassionate mind, very helpful to sustain your immune system and create healthy body. So healthy mind, healthy body together. So these days I'm telling hygiene of physical in our education, one subject, hygiene of physical there. Now time come in our education should include hygiene of emotion. So now here, the religious teaching not adequate. Now scientific sort of, on the basis of a scientific finding, and then tell people, on the basis of scientific finding, people more easily acceptable. So therefore, since many years, over 30 years, I have serious discussion with modern scientists. Now mainly, there's four fields: cosmology, neurobiology, and physics, quantum physics, including quantum physics, then psychology. So these are the common subject. In Buddhist also, you see, much sort of explanation about how whole galaxies form a single atom, and then remain through evolution. And then gradually, destruction. Then finally, empty space. Everything come from space, and then because of disappear in space. So that's I think we can discuss about that. Also, this is in principle the Big Bang theory. So we believe several Big Bangs, not just one Big Bang. So then, neurobiology. I asked some Tibetan physicians who have, I think, more knowledge about physical element, these things. Then, physics, particularly quantum physics. One Indian, the nuclear physicist, he no longer with us, but his name, Rajaramana. Now he once told me, quantum physics in the West, something new. In this country, 2,000 years ago, already developed that concept. It is very true. Particularly, Nagarjuna's sort of a philosophical view, exactly same. And Buddha's own sort of teaching, Parijyaparamita Sutra, mentioned that. So these things, I think, are something common with modern scientists and because of the Buddhist concept. And then psychology. As I mentioned earlier, we really need more education to younger generation, how to tackle our emotion when we're facing some problem. You see, the problem starts from here. And lack of sense of concern of others' well-being. Anger, want to destroy other. Then the modern, or say the weapons, these are really, which is suppose weapons are, the one, the instrument to solve problem, but they actually create more problem. Once you touch violence and counter-violence, then again counter-violence, endless violence. So I usually call this century should be a century of dialogue. Whenever we face some disagreement, through talk, through dialogue, try to solve. So psychology, and then most important is peaceful mind is very good for our health. The other day, I met some students, and I asked them, do you prefer smile or angry face? Then everybody say smile face. They prefer smile face. True. Even animal, dogs, Even some, I think, birds also, if you show them kindness, compassionate attitude, these animals also come closer, closer, closer. Dogs, I think some dogs even, you see, make distinction. Like this angry face or smiling face, I think some dogs make distinction, isn't it? If you also show them affection and a pet, they do that. If you face something, angry face, the dog, the tail, something like that. So therefore, now, through teaching, Buddha says that, or Jesus Christ said that, today's world population, 7 billion, around 1 billion non-believer. So they don't care about religious teaching. So now, the scientists, on the basis of scientific finding, we can explain. According to Indian tradition, we say a secular way to educate. Secular means respect all religion and also respect a non-believer. So that's Indian tradition. Secular is, I think, very realistic, very relevant to today's world. So now, that's the main purpose of our meeting. You see, on the basis of a scientific sort of finding, how to educate warm-heartedness, the moral principle based on warm-heartedness, isn't it? So then, Russia, geographically, since it's my contact meeting with scientists mainly from America and from some European countries or some Japanese, but in the past, quite rare with Russian scientists. Now, Russia geographically bridge between East and West. Very important. As far as Tibet is concerned, when I was young, in some big monastic institution, some Russians there, some Mongols, some Buryat, some Kalmykian, some Tuva. So they become very good scholar. Some become top scholar. So traditionally, we have some connection. And then politically, during 13th Dalai Lama, there's some contact with the Tsar, late Tsar. And during Lenin time, I think after revolution, some delegation from Russia, from Soviet Union, as it came to Lhasa. And then Tibetan mind, communist, so a little bit sort of, what say they, cautious like that. So in any way, historically, we have some connection. So therefore, I am very, very pleased, very happy having now second time meeting with Russian scientist. Thank you, most welcome. Now yesterday weather also is very bad. Now today seems the weather also join us. Welcome you. Okay.
Thank you very much, Your Holiness. Just to mention, recently there have been several publications, scientific work, showing that even mice and rats have smiles. They have expression which can be classified in their behavior and social behavior as smiling. So our first participant who would like to discuss with you the ideas around your book is Professor Pavel Balabanov. He is the director of the Institute of Higher Nervous Activity and Neurophysiology of the Russian Academy of Sciences. So he is a neuroscientist, and his field of study is learning and memory. So it is directly relates both to the issues of mind and also education.
Your Holiness, I'm studying neurobiology of high brain functions for many years, and particularly neurobiology and neural mechanisms of emotions and compassion. That's why I was very pleased. It was very nice for me to see in your book that you ask a question whether small animals like insects have emotions, because I'm working in small animals, snails, simple snails, which do not communicate with us too much. But the problem, whether they have emotions, it's a scientific problem, and how we can solve it. In animals, in rats, and should be in humans, there were shown that there are pleasure centers. There are special regions in the brain which, if you stimulate it, intra-brain electric stimulation, the animals stop doing anything. They just want to receive this stimulus. And if the animals tend to repeat this, they like it, it means that they have emotions. So we repeated these experiments in snails. So the snails were in such position that they can press a lever. They can press a button and receive electric stimulation in their brain, in a special zone. And it appeared that they have pleasure centers. So this small animal can like or dislike something. This study, it just showed that small animals have something like emotions, not, of course, such emotions like humans, but the roots of it, even these small animals, they have it. That's just, I want to tell you this experiment. About compassion, it's more difficult to investigate it in animals.
I always have the one question. The mosquito seems to see, of course, some kind of brain, their own brain.
Yeah, very complicated actually, brain.
You know, occasionally I give some blood to mosquito.
All of us.
So long, you see, no malaria, no danger of malaria, and I give some blood to some mosquito. Some mosquito come and enjoy my blood, and their whole body become red. Then a few bubbles come there, then they fly. No sign of appreciation.
Yes, you're right.
So birds, dogs, you see, if you feed them, you see they showing kindness, they also some kind of signs of appreciation there. So I'm wondering, since many years, I publicly also mentioned the brain size, which level have the potential of appreciation. Do you have some answer?
No. Today we don't have any answer, but appreciation can be measured if they want to repeat it once again and once again. Mosquitoes, they do it once in their lives. No appreciation. And snails, they like to repeat and repeat. They come again and come again for years. The snails can live for 12 years, so it's quite a
I think mosquito, I think, I don't know. I say, how many years? I think at least 1 year, of
1
course.
year,
Huh?
yes, only 1
Oh,
year.
few months, they remain. They
Yeah.
also, you see, notice, I mean, they knows what time is best to
Yeah.
enjoy blood. So when a light off, then we sleep, then they know, now this is the best time. So they repeat. So they have some sort of, also the ability to know, some memory, like that.
Of course. Okay.
And then, of course, because of the birds, these, certainly, they have some brain, like that.
Absolutely.
So snail, you mentioned, I don't know. Snail have some brain?
Very, very nice
Ah.
brain.
Can you identify?
Yes, yes.
I don't know. Of course, okay.
Okay, I want to tell about how we can measure compassion. In our institute in the 60s, 70s, there were made such experiments with rats. So the rats were put in a special compartment where they can see another rat. And one of the rats was shocked with electric shock. And another rat wasn't shocked, but it can see it. And it has two options, whether to hide itself in a small house, and they prefer, when it's daylight, they prefer to hide. They like to be there. But then another rat will be shocked. If they come out, the shock will stop. And so they can rescue another rat. And very quickly they understand, all rats very quickly understand that if they come out to the light, then no shock. And it appeared that if you take 100 rats and compare what they will do, about 35%, they always have compassion. They come to the light, they suffer, but they rescue another one. About 30% didn't care at all.
Oh.
And 30%, they this and that way, they didn't decide. So it seems that...
What makes differences? Age or past experience? What makes differences? 80% just the one.
It looks... It looks that not age, nothing make difference. So it looks like in every society, in every population of animals, humans, there are about 30-40% compassionate, 30-40% indifferent, or have not decided. And
I think here, I think make differences. The animal, those social animals, individuals, firstly, is come from their mother. Come from egg, I don't know. Since many years, so I express, if there is one sort of opportunity, turtle come from egg. Mother lay down, egg, then mother left. They never met, never meet. So you see the mother turtle keep, and then when they egg hatch, then let's see that young turtle recognize mother or not. I don't think that nature is such. They from egg, they independently they have to look after by themselves, not depend on mother. So the closeness feeling, not there. Then dogs, cats, the youngster, their survival depend on care of other.
Yeah.
So they bond, closeness feeling there for survival. So, so animal, birds also, I think the youngsters' survival depend on parent or particularly mother. So till the young bird flying independently, the close relation with mother and their child, like that. So social animal have some kind of also the emotional feeling,
Yeah.
closeness,
And
like
compassion.
that. Compassion.
Yeah.
Those animals more or less survive independently, then no need that kind of sort of feeling. So then, we human beings are social animals. We all come from our mother. Because without mothers take care, we're no longer here. Isn't it? Like that.
Absolutely.
So that's our nature. Yes? No?
Okay, so we have some compassion, and we will try in future to investigate neural mechanisms of compassion, and maybe we will have some tablets for compassion. I don't
Because
know.
a tablet,
Some pills. Pills.
pill, no.
Doesn't-
I don't think.
Okay.
Compassion must develop through training. But some drugs, I don't think. Maybe too much anger, some drugs may reduce anger.
They reduce anger.
But I don't think any sort of external thing can increase loving kindness. I don't think. Only through training of mind, use human intelligence, analyze what's the value of anger. Anger, no value, only destroy your peace of mind, and then eventually, as I mentioned earlier, ruin your own physical health. So, on the other hand, compassion brings inner peace, inner strength, and determination. Compassion brings us optimism. Anger creates pessimism, isn't it?
Exactly.
So our life depends on optimistic attitude. Optimism, very important. So sometimes I feel there's some religious tradition, you see, including Buddhism, use fear. I don't think that's the right way. Fear, you see, brings more sort of, or discourage, and sort of pessimism. So seeing positive thing, and sort of feel sort of some kind of optimism. Oh, I must achieve that. Full of optimism. Optimism open our mind. Pessimism go like that. What do you think?
I agree.
Very good. Now I received one agreement from one scientist.
Okay. And I have one question. Maybe this question the science cannot answer. And this question also is in your book. So when we take the whole brain, it's a brain of sentient being, right? But if you take a part of the brain, how small should it be to be still sentient? That's a big problem. A big problem for us, we are working with isolated brains. We isolate parts of the brain and we can maintain them for many days, weeks. But it seems that we can culture the neurons, they form nets. It's like nervous system, but it's not nervous system. And the problem for science is to understand whether well, I don't speak about consciousness, but whether it's like it has some sentience or not. That's a question. It's very important for science because scientific Western direction, it says that usually something should have the aim. For instance, a sperm and oocyte, they don't have the aim when they are separate. When they combine, a new organism arises. It has the aim and future. Separately, they don't have it. And this moment, it's something, for me, it's not understandable. Maybe you can comment on this.
Now, some occasion, I ask some scientists, the mother's womb, perfect, no sort of defect. Then father's sort of sperm, perfect, no defect. Then egg from mother also is perfect. Then can you say 100% as soon as sperms and egg join, then is it 100% to take life or not? Then they say no. Then you have to find the answer, third factor, not only just combine these sperms and eggs, not 100% sure take life or exception. So, what do you say? And this is one thing. Then another thing, person, you see who, the blood, no, the heartbeat stop. Then blood circulation to brain stop. Then within short period, brain dead. But then there are many cases. Just the other day, I think about 2 weeks ago, one person, you see, after death, clinically death, but the physical still remain very fresh. Next 10 days. And my own tutor, 13 days. Another, case, about 20 days, nearly 3 weeks, physical remain very fresh. Now, up to now, the scientists, no answer. So some American sort of scientists, brain specialists, we already now start some project to investigate clinically dead, but physically still remain fresh, and how it happened. So do you have some idea? So modern science, and till late 20th century, it's a scientist simply accept brain, no mind. Later part of 20th century, some American sort of institution, sort of experiment, through training of mind, some effect their brain. Kaza plus kaza. Neuroplasticity. So through meditation, through training of mind, that thing, that increase. So they now eventually accept another sort of say, force or factor which can affect our brain. So later part of 20th century, now beginning of 21st century, now some brain specialists, now they carry some sort of, a special investigation, relation between mind and brain. So now some scientists, many from America, and also from, I think, one Germany. Right? So they begin to feel, there is some kind of, whatever you call, there's some kind of, we call consciousness or mind, something there, they say. And then there are people who remember about past life. One Indian girl, I think 4 or 5 years old, the parent is brought to me, that girl. You see, very clear memory about past life. And then eventually, that girl, you see, found, that parent found the previous life's home. So still, the parent of previous life still alive. So the girl reached there. So they expressed, because they mentioned the name of different sort of people, their relatives, and parents' name very clearly. One Tibetan boy, born in Lhasa, in Tibet, he insists to his parent, this is not my home. My home is in India. So they eventually, the parent brought that boy, come here. Then they still, boy say, no, this is not my home. My home is South India. Eventually reach there, and then point out one monastery. This is my place. Then finally, the boy reached the previous life's home, small cottage. When that boy is reached there, oh, now this is my home. And then expressed, in one box, he expressed my glass there. Then open, yes, the glass. Quite authentic. So, whether there is previous life or not, if there is previous life, and then what the connection, previous life and this life? New brain, new body, new brain. Past life's brain, dead. So what connection?
And can there be a connection to the future life?
But I mean, you see, different body, past life's body, dead, or no longer, or cremated, right? No, cremated. Then new body, not yet developed. But then you say, well, what is the connection? We describe mind. There are different level of mind. Grosser level of mind, which goes with sensorial mind. Then dream time, sensorial mind no longer function. Then the just main mind. Then deep sleep, main mind also now a little subtler. Then faint, including sort of stop breathing, still more because of the more, how to say, deeper mind. Then at the time of death, the brain stop. The deepest mind still remain there. We described that mind connected. That mind, no beginning, no end. So therefore, Jain philosophy, Jain tradition, and Buddhist tradition, and also Sangha philosophy, three ancient Indian tradition, is a life, no beginning. So, no creator, ourself creator. So beginningless our life. The Jains or Sangha philosophy, then they describe Atma, independent self, completely independent from this body or this mind, some kind of independent, absolute self. So that makes connection, previous life, this life. Then Buddhists, no such self, but then a subtle mind continuously go. So in any way, now, but the point is, there are cases who remember past life, and at the time of death, body remain very fresh. So we need some scientific way explanation. So this is your new job, to investigate further.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So first,
Professor Medvedev, he is the principal scientist of the Institute of Human Brain in St. Petersburg, and a former director for many years of this institute. He is
St. Petersburg.
St. Petersburg.
Oh, right.
He is for the first time at this meeting, but actually you met him nearly 10 years ago. He came to visit you in 2009. And he is neuroscientist and actually physicist by his initial training. His doctoral dissertation was in theoretical physics.
Thank you.
so thank you very much for giving me a pleasure to take part of this conference. First of all, I would like to give you a book. I wrote this book maybe half a year ago. It's Mind versus Brain. I suppose that it would be interesting. Unfortunately, it's in Russian, but maybe somebody from your people will
Yes,
read
we
it
will.
and tell you about what is it. Because it's really what is the relationship between mind and brain. This is the main topic of my scientific work, how brain maintains mental activity, how brain maintains consciousness. When I read your book, it was very interesting for me, and many paragraph was really very surprising and very important. But here, yesterday, we had a very interesting discussion, and I would like to tell not maybe about my pure scientific work, but my impression and some comments about this, about your book, because it's really very impressive for me. First of all, yesterday, from Russian part, was a lot of questions about how to prove the fundamental principle of Buddhism. And when I thought about it, I suppose that maybe it is not a good idea to prove it, because in our science, in European science, there are practically all main fundamental things was not proven. For example, energy, energy
Conservation.
energy preservation. Second law of thermodynamic, they had no proof. That you have proof only some other things, which logically goes from these basic statements. But basic statements, Western science accept without any proof, like axiomatic. Practically, if we think about this approach to your side, I suppose that it is not necessary to discuss this basic proof. It's like an axiomatic for people, for many instance. But what is interesting, that all logic after that is really very good, because you have more than 2,000 of training of logic, compared that we have not so much. And the main difference, you wrote about different... So, you wrote about mathematics and about that fact that Western science proves all things. And I can say that it began about 2,000 years ago when Pythagoras proved his theorem. Of course, people in Babylon, in India, in Egypt, they knew that sum of squares of two cathets is equal to hypotenuse, the square of hypotenuse. But it was unnecessary for them to prove it. And I suppose that it's the time for bifurcation between Western and Buddhist and some Eastern science. It is here it is necessary to know that it is so. And now... And the problem is that mathematics is not a science, it's a kind of language. It's when you prove something mathematically, it's a translation from one language to another language. But one can't find any new things by mathematics, but not, it's not so for logic. And if one understands logic of life, logic of how, and if one sees some phenomena, it's practically sometimes more important. And now we use mathematics, which was developed by description of movement of only two bodies, Moon and Earth. And even this... and even this task was solved very approximately, because Moon and Earth is not the sphere, and so on and so on. And now, practically, all use of mathematics, as you use in first chapters of your book, said that's one of the main difference between two branches of sciences. More or less, just to make a kind of unification of different schools, of different studies. In brain studies, practically use of mathematics is not quite good even now, because if you want to prove something by mathematics, it's necessary to prove the foundation that neuron impulse has some distribution and so on and so on. And it never exists. So practically, mathematics is kind of unification of all results. It's very easy to discuss some results if they proved by mathematical methods.
ဒီလုံကိုဒီမောတာကာရှန်လုံကိုဒီကျွန်တော်လုံကိုတူတွေ Okay. Yes.
So now I can say that when we investigate brain, highest functional brain, it's very difficult to use methods of Western science, because when you want to receive very strong proof of something, if you want to receive results which is statistically good, you can receive no results at all, because every human every brain solves each task in different way. And even if he solves things just now and in an hour, it is a different work of the brain. So practically now, now I suppose it's a kind of transition from so-called very pure mathematical approach to a more logical approach, which is much closer than it is in your science. And so, and I would like to say that even now we go on the way which elaborated biological work of our ancestor of Sechenov, Bechterev, and Pavlov. For example, one idea of Pavlov as that is a bright spot in the brain which during thinking, it was written about 100 years ago, and only 2 decades ago it was possible to prove. So I suppose that so I can say that we more and more comes at the transition from pure pure scientific, like geometry and algebra, to logical consideration how it is possible to work. Well, now it's difficult for us to prove it sometimes experimentally, but still, when we investigate very tiny phenomena, the logical way, I suppose, is one of the main idea how we can understand human brain. And when you spoke about that how people can understand something which they could not know. Yesterday we discussed about this situation that we have a lot of limitation, a lot of inhibition in brain. Why? Because it's social life, and we are, during evolution, we are social animals. And in this case, our features, which could be inhibited just because it's not good for society, like telepathy. I don't know whether it is. Telepathy. 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 So, from my point of view, there are two words of real things, physical words, and words of ideas. This word of ideas has very strong rules, which ideas could interact between each other. And our brain is a kind of interface. If we have consciousness, in Russia, it sounds like understanding each other, not only understanding but yourself, but understanding each other. And so this ideal world of ideas exists maybe separately. Without it, we could. Without it, we couldn't understand each other. And brain is a kind of interface between these two. What ideas is like geometry or algebra. It's algebra exists, but it's not possible to touch it. So, and I suppose that it's a kind of convergence between our studies. I think that your phrase that I would like to say it, the phrase that if you find something which is in contrary with some Buddhist idea, you change ideas, but wouldn't change this real things. So it's very important for us that in principle, in this case, it's possible to work together because your very, very strong side is logic. It's art of logic. And second, I think that we have to have some, we discussed about it 10 years ago, and even you send some people, but it was difficult to find funds to begin this mutual study. You sent a few people, they came to my institute, and we discussed about possible plans. So, and you told a few minutes ago about that situation when brain dead, but physically physically still exists like alive. I think that really it would be very interesting. In our institute, we have all possibility for non-invasive, non-destruction, controlled investigation. And if it would be interesting, we'll be ready and to have a kind of joint study what happens, because it's really existed phenomena. Nobody knows why it is so, but now we have really a very strong devices which could be, it's possible to think that we can solve this, maybe not fully solve, but basically fundamental things about why it is possible, how it is possible, and maybe really brain is still active, but
coffee.
Not in very high extent.
Yes. Kasa. I think as far as Buddhism is concerned, the Buddha, usually we call Dharma wheel, Chongko Tangpo, Chongko Nipa, Chongko Sumba.
So in Buddhism, we mentioned the three sermons of the Buddha, the first sermon, and then second and the third.
First teaching, first Dharma wheel, he Four Noble Truth. Then second Dharma wheel, the more detailed explanation about third Noble Truth, cessation. How cessation possible? All suffering can cease, can eliminate, because of the causes of suffering, ultimately related with ignorance. So ignorance can eliminate by fuller knowledge, like that. So the second Dharma wheel, more explanation about what is the reality. Ignorance means, you see, because of the distorted
view,
distortedly the reality. So in order to know the distorted sort of view or concept, you have to know the reality. Then the second Dharma wheel, you see, explain what's the ultimate reality. Nothingness, shunyata, emptiness. So emptiness does not mean nothingness, but things exist, but merely designated. So the second Dharma wheel, you see, taught further explanation about that. Then third Dharma wheel, to some people, is find a little difficult about the concept of second Dharma wheel. So he, some sort of, according the different method disposition, you see, he taught, different philosophy, different concept about reality. In the meantime, the third Dhamma wheel, more explanation about consciousness, different level and very subtle level. See, he mentioned that very subtle level of mind is the seed of Buddha. Like that. Then Buddha himself, you see, taught or expressed, "Oh, my follower should not accept my teaching out of faith, out of devotion, but rather thorough investigation and experiment." That's, I think, a very scientific way. So I also, you see, telling, I believe one aspect of Buddha is ancient Indian scientist. He considered investigation is more important than faith. So then, from first Dharma wheel, about the Vinaya practice, these things, and Four Noble Truths on these things. So that's common Pali tradition, Sanskrit tradition. The second Dharma wheel and third Dharma wheel, more detailed explanation in Sanskrit tradition, not Pali tradition. So some Nalendra master, like Nagarjuna and Chandrakirti, rejected some Buddha's own word. If you accept this Buddha's teaching, it goes against reason. Therefore, we should not accept that teaching.
It's very important. Very important.
Oh. So the Nalendra tradition emphasizes reason and experiment more important than faith. So then when you investigate the reality through reasoning, that's shaja. Yuji Dharamsala, Tong Gunjur, Chungse Gojur, Shindu Gojur.
So therefore we need to deal with the objects of knowledge, and within the objects of knowledge there are three categories. One is those obvious things, I mean, they are perceptible with our sensory perceptions and so forth, and then the second one is slightly hidden phenomena which needs to be proved through inferential reasoning, and then the third one is called the extremely hidden phenomena which need to be verified through by resorting to scriptural reasoning and authority.
Now, for example, you see your body, say, no reason I can see, I can touch.
Yes, you did.
They told me you say.
So that's the obvious, and it comes within the obvious object.
Then, while you explaining certain things, or the Quran equal to Nashta to Sabesoro, did you that Quran Nag Rigil Tene and Quran Samu Kadiji Meji, Saba thoughts Chetuwa.
So when you give your speech here, when you were talking about what you were talking earlier, when His Holiness could see, feel that, maybe you were thinking about such and such things, although the mind or your thought is not like seen, but it could be inferred. So that's the second type of object.
Then you also do the deeper experience. For example, this very moment, what kind of sort of mind thinking? Yes.
So in such cases, we could only tell about what you are thinking through your own speech, what you are saying, and there's no other way to know that.
So very deeper level is beyond reason. Have to rely on the person's description. 간다 강사 숨버디고 거라 뭐수다 냠뇽 중데 되게 나라 대야마도 주지 거 좋아합니다. 그래서 통은 중세고주 신도고주 시치 숨지.
And so the third type of object of knowledge could only be known through verbal testimony of the person who has the experience, who is talking about those experiences. Only through that. And therefore we have these three objects of knowledge.
다 리피치드잖아요. 양아주 디시기요래. 거사. 더 정기미도 신이지를 봐. 냐한테 말해. 냐 태주지를 봐. 태주스럽도 디인산 디구 사디 태주를 거쳐. 태주를 그 시죄서디 아니 두던 제부다 아니 차잔다 양라잔 사로 지들 몽고 지로도 스테니 시리자네 다 아니 규득게 경제기 단 저와 샤이르자네 뒤주고 아니 뭐 친구이 내리 나 시베 냠용이 내리 들지 지 그게 제단으로 지 맨다마다 이거 디디 주실 거인데 자치베르고 드네 봐도 윤두산에 아니 시베 유르기야 주고 알았어 그 세리상부터 다니듯이 쥐니지고 다 도스 도되기도 와 자 리보 시관에 태주고지고 엔데네 엔 가사 뒤주고지고 자 되베지고 되네 자치베지고 되네 쥐니지고 다 체리네 탈도 있는 쥐니지고가 토고 내절을 시샤셔요.
So when we deal with logic and reasoning, in Buddhist tradition there is mention of what are known as the four principles of reasoning. And so the first one that we could talk about is called that of the principle of argument, where you use proofs to say, to try to prove something. And in order to be able to do that, we need to also have go through this the principle of relativity. And so, because of this, certain things being made up of such and such particle parts and so forth, we could use reasonings to prove things. And within that, there is also the reasoning that the causality also comes within that. And then there is the third third principle, which is that of the functionality of things. Because of such and such things going on in this, experience and so forth. We can say this has this kind of function and so forth. And then the fourth one is called the nature, the principle of nature. And so when this would be like, talking about the mind having this quality of cognition, cognitivity, and also clarity or luminosity. And so the very fact that mind is cognitive and luminous is its nature. But when you go through scientific investigation, we just can't say it's nature. You have to also go through the reasonings.
So now time for tea.
Thank you. 15 minutes tea break.
I think some of you sit here.
Yeah,
I think.
Thank you.
Oh, tea. I think we'll bring here.
Tea will be served outside, and we ask you to join back in 10 minutes, please.
10 minutes. Shall we continue? Yes. Our Nikolai Kazimirovich, our next participant is Professor Yankovsky. He is geneticist and scientific director of Institute of General Genetics of Russian Academy of Sciences.
Your Holiness, thank you for the invitation to participate in the meeting on understanding the world. It's important that Russia, for many dozens of years, were absolutely under materialistic view of the world, and it's important that Buddhist science is based mainly on metaphysics of understanding of the world through ideas, and combination of the two approaches are important to have the whole picture of the world. I am a geneticist for all my life, and actually genetics, heredity,
Oh, that one.
is the basis for life, any kind of life, including ourselves. I would like to tell on some benefits and threats which may be caused by genetic studies, and to share my view on possible moral aspects of such kind of studies. First of all, a few words about genetics in simple terms for a couple of minutes. Actually, heredity is written, it's a kind of genetic text presented as chemical molecules called DNA. It's only 4 letters, A, T, G, and C, but the number of letters in genetics text of us is 3 billion. 3 billion from mother and 3 billion from father. In each cells, the chain of the letters is approximately 1.5 meters in each of your cells. But the cells are 10,000 billions in each of us. So your own genetic text is much longer than the distance between our planet and the sun. It's 10,000 times longer. The problem is that it's not a problem for you to operate with all the genetics text in you of this enormous size. And what's fantastic from scientific point of view, that we now able to know the whole text within few hours, each of the 3 billion letters. Furthermore, we are able to synthesize any piece of the text, and even it was synthesized for the whole living organisms in vitro. The text is can be divided into instructions, into fragments. For different genes are responsible for different features, according appearance and according our behavior. It's important because such things which are field of science and field of practice in Buddhism, like meditation, in Western tradition it's psychotherapy, depends predisposition to be responsive to such kind of action. Depends on your genes also. And in principle, I believe it will be known in time what versions of the genes are more important to be more responsive to meditation and to actually to our behavior. It's not only for good. Of course, it would be the most helpful to have such kind of products of our own genes to make a better feeling of ourselves, of the world. But at the same time, another version of the same gene may convert you to another state, not to be relaxed, but say to get angry. And that's important to realize that all gene products can be used in different direction to our health and to our behavior. I would say that it's getting more and more easy to not only to understand particular structure of the instructions for a particular person, but even to synthesize the fragments to influence our health to the bad or to make some harm. And that's a threat from genetic studies which we need to keep in mind. Not so many genes are needed to maintain alive. It's like 500 only.
아니 딩나로 롬다 드즈트 냠레지 미수수의 시주의 바인데 성당다 드즈트 리제기 파주만다비 차주 와 디칸데지메 안다테다 아니 하피게 리제나로 아니 고차지 차지 두스파 고야 유르서 바나 차시 가시 지기한지 레베 차 남바이나 고 시주다 지 그바 카리는 야가 용되지 야 가시 직토네 야 빙네베리들의 마고 용되지 그게 좀 소요했어
So
the details. Nga ki shung ne, ene lunga nam shamungu shek re. Baza sheba yu rigyadi nipati che. Sheba yoyadi di lunga chile shek yore. So lunga yada, zawa lunga, yalaga lunga, mungu su shek muduwa. Chazanga, lunga sim yukpa chik chani. 다지 룽슬도 수그르와 수정시 차서 자상가 나주 벽에 진다 된데르기 직벽에 패년자 조디 시에바 세좀 릭섬디 그런 모르고 가가리 그 시에바를 모두 숙제 말봐 남시의 님도 로댕에기 차외 룽디 숙제를 봐 자상 진디든 저용서의 패지 룽토는 요구에 설치 어디서 통도 the semda daga na shingi lung nija lola rakba chawa shindu chawa riba bongu yore sa ta da nge de isagi dos ji gomjim de namshi baya sing de chede zo lung ge tane yung ge be so yore da di de wa shmen ro sing
So in Tantra, the esoteric teachings, there is mention of what are known as wind energies or pranas. And the prana at the subtle level also goes together with mind. So when we talk about these two being together, I mean, the mind has this ability or the function of cognitive nature and knowing things and luminosity, whereas the fact that the mind moves towards objects is actually the function of the wind energy that goes with it. And so what I think is maybe when you talk about the expression of genes and so forth, I mean the changes that are happening in the genes and so forth, this could be perhaps related with the wind energy that moves the mind towards objects as well. And within the wind energy also there are the 5 fundamental or the principal wind energies and 5 derivative ones as well. And then in both the cases of mind and the energy that goes together with it, there are these 3 degrees of subtlety, the gross ones, and then the slightly subtle and the innermost subtle wind and mind energies as well.
Number 2. Any? No, there's 5. I can't remember all 5. They also can't remember. 자상가 공연 시버 소소도 체인도 전에 양라고 롱 소소지 시야지. 아니 또 전에 롱 정해야 사는 시야요래. 저 아니 시버 줘야 돼. 돌람부터네 시버 코랑 그 때문에 그게 가서다. 남도 상디리아 빼야도 진행부터 시버 코랑 그 때문에 봤다 숙중다야. 당하게 저롱기다 냠는데 진행도 전에 남도 교약에 선배 롱디 까베거네 얘네 남도한테 거야지 그래서 용되기도 봐.
So when our sensory perceptions like visual perception and auditory perception and so forth work, when they are, they work with the help of these wind energies, which are called like the energy that moves and intensely moving and so forth. So that's why someone said that the scholars here are not able to remember all the 5 derivative wind energies. And then, within the teaching of the Buddha, there are the sutra and the general teachings, and then the esoteric teachings of Tantra. And so, within the context of the Sutrayana, what is mentioned is that the fact that the consciousness moves towards objects, it operates on objects, is merely the function of the mind itself. I mean, there's no talk of wind energy helping the mind to move towards objects, but the mind itself moves. I mean, the visual perception, is directed towards the object by itself and so forth. And whereas in Tantra, then this function of moving towards object is actually done by the wind energies.
So I feel
and so
genes are the 마시셰바다 저가시 셰드샤 투그제 이는 조페지 룽부터네 루면로 상황이 된 거래.
So perhaps we could explain things like what you do through genetic expression and so forth. But from our point of view, I think maybe the changes in the gene and so forth has to do with the movement of these energies.
A practically important outcome of our knowledge is that we, in the future, will be able to change, maybe completely, all different kind of chemicals into just gene products, which are of limited number. So it's rather many, nearly 30,000. But the point is that when we are getting ill, it means that from genetic point of view, our genes are working not properly. And then, without any chemicals, we are getting healthy in time. And it means that our genes, it's got possible to change situation genetically, and the illness disappeared. So if we have these chemicals as gene products, we can replace any kind of chemicals which are artificial. That's important. But it's a good thing. But from the same time, some genes are crucially known for our life. It was chemically synthesized molecule DNA, which were converted into living cells. It was created in vitro. It was what was alive forever. It was done in the United States by Craig Panther. What's it? What does it mean that we have only 1,000 genes which are crucially important, each of that? Of course, they are in different versions of text, in bacteria, in plant, or in ours. But in principle, it's 1,000 which are crucially needed. What would happen if you switched on or remove a gene, if it's removed from our body, removed or shut down? In principle, we cannot live without this function. Is it possible or not? We understand now principles where we know how to remove it, or at least shut it down. And it's a very dangerous situation because the knowledge creates new kind of weapon which did not exist up to now. we need to keep in mind that the technology are developing very quickly and is getting more and more cheap to get any particular result of designed either for good or for bad. Say a human genome sequence, it costed more than $1 billion 25 years ago, and now it costs $1,000. It's 1 million times less for 25 years. The same for gene synthesis. It means that creation of new genes or new versions of the genes, which may be not just helpful, but may be harmful, it will cost nearly nothing and can be done nearly on kitchen by children. It's a dangerous situation because some people has crazy ideas about how world must be organized and trying to implement their ideas into life. And if creation of a new kind of weapons, hundreds new lethal weapons from knowing of genetics and genomics. It's a kind of new threat which may be in hands of bad people. And we need to realize whether such kind of weapon existed, was implemented, neutralize how to detect it, how to protect ourselves from it, or have means to survive and be protected from such weapons. It's a very important question. Is it connected to some situation of today? I would say yes, because we need some means of controlling, say, insects, and it was genetically modified organisms, very much discussed topic. It was a kind of different stuff, both to us and to the plant. But when it was implemented, the beetles which were eating the plants died. But what's done 3 years ago? It was published in Science, the American journal. That piece of normal genes, absolutely needed and helpful for the beetle, was introduced specifically into the plant. And when beetle eat the leaf of a larvae, it died. It's piece of normal genes. It's not anything special to kill. It's piece of absolutely needed genes for the beetle. The point is that we all need such kind of genes, even humans. And actually, it may be in principle done for human body, for human genome. And it's awful situation which we need to realize. And it's already existing. And here is a problem which you mentioned in your book as one of the crucial for scientists. What is moral? What is not? What must not be done? And what is actually moral to do? And here are two different ways to consider it. When we, as scientists, discover something new, it's not moral or not. Say, a switcher for genes, to switch it on or switch it off. It's not moral as such. But if we use it for, say, as a drug, healthy, that's good. But if we use it to switch off the gene and the body will be dead, it's awful and it's immoral to do. But scientists don't know whether it will be moral or not when he is actually discovering a switcher. Politics are responsible for the implementation, and it's the question of morality is more for them. So, shall we stop any kind of discoveries which may be potentially harmful? Any kind of discovery may be used for the good or for the bad. Shall we stop discovering at all or not? So that's the questions which I would like you to comment. What about scientists? How to be in research, not implementation, about moral things?
Okay. The fundamental level, what is good and what is bad? Of course, according to religion, there are some different sort of views. Okay. But generally, since including insect want happiness, so anything which bring happiness is good. Anything which brings pains or long run, you see pains and suffering, that's bad. That's the demarcation of good and bad. So moral, anything which beneficial or brings more happiness, joyfulness, that's ethics way, ethical, moral ethics. Any sort of thing which brings ultimately suffering, pains, that's immoral. So any scientific sort of research ultimately bring some benefit to concerned people or world even, it's good. And anything which ultimately bring more suffering, more pain, that's bad. So I think that's the basis of demarcation, good and bad. Nothing to do with God or religion. Then, so principle, something good or bad, beneficial or not, that's principle. And you mentioned some pill for compassion. If there is sort of the reality, then no need to teach compassion, just to make more pill and distribute. I don't think. You see, the compassion, anger is part of emotion, part of mind. So the sort of antidote, that not physical, but within mind itself. So I believe the fundamental level is the whole life. For example, on this galaxies, this planet, like Darwin theory, evolution takes place because they want survival. So for survival, I think we love our life. Animal also. After this life, because of cease this life, things mystery. So prefer this existing life. So for survival of that, through centuries, you see some effort. I think at the beginning, just a sea, ocean, no human being, and some small germs in the sea. then gradually, you see, a small, organism. Then now some occasion I ask scientists, now rocks at our brain, very subtle level particle. Any differences? They say no differences. But then combine particle and then certain level, that now kasoda or matter also become the basis of consciousness. So also the very subtle level of particle, also the vegetables, trees, rocks, and our body, very subtle level, same. But gradually, you see some evolution way change. Then eventually, there is certain sort of also the group of cell, then become basis of consciousness. Then life come. Life here means with feeling. The plant, there's life. Water, there's life, but no feeling. So life with feeling, pains and pleasure. Now that we consider now sentient being. So now here, it reached mysterious level. How? Why? Then some say God. Some say karma, previous life, life after life. I think both God as a creator and life after life, this I think to scientists, this is the third level.
So for the scientists, perhaps this comes within the third category of objects of knowledge, which is the extremely hidden phenomenon.
So difficult. I think I am Buddhist. I never say we know everything. So similarly, scientists, I think, should have the feeling there is limitation.
Yeah, we don't know plenty of things and things, and actually what we know is just a little part of the whole nature, and it will be forever the same.
That's right.
Yeah.
But still really worthwhile research. So long, no harming other. Then very good.
Yeah, Holiness, I would like to ask your advice and opinion. By our schedule, we have a meeting until 11:30. That means that we have to end it right now.
Yes.
But there are two more participants which didn't have a chance to talk to you. Do you think we can continue for half an hour or so to let them speak?
Okay.
Then the next, our Russian scientist, Evgeny Rogaev, Professor Rogaev. He is professor of the Moscow State University, head of Department of Genetics, and also professor at Massachusetts Massachusetts University, and he's geneticist.
Thank you very much.
Then of course, after lunch, see, some sort of because of the monk scholars, I think you see they continuously discuss. And some field, I think my brain, now 82-year-old brain, so this younger monk, their brain more fresh. Porto level, Shabbat level, so, you see, discuss afternoon continuously. Very good. Then, of course, tomorrow. Now,
Thank you for inviting me. It's a great pleasure and honor to be here. I'll try to be short, and hopefully we'll discuss later some issues, what is of interest for me. But first of all, I'd like to quickly introduce what we're doing and what we're interested in. We're interested in dissection of a special function of brains, and in identifying what genes are responsible for specific disorders related to high neural system functions. For example, in schizophrenia, depression, Alzheimer's disease, etc. What genes are responsible for that? And when we're saying the genes, we mean mutant genes are responsible for these diseases. There is no specific genes for diseases. All genes are important for normal functions. But when we were saying the disease genes, we mean mutant gene, okay? So, let me start from from this statement of very famous geneticist. His name is Dobzhansky. He's a geneticist of Russian origin, work in United States, and he wrote some quite remarkable short paper, a kind of dispute with religions' visions on origin of the world, and he has a quite nice conclusion at the end of his paper. He said that apparently the is not the center of the universe, it's just a speck of dust in the cosmic space, but it may be a center, a spiritual center of universe. Indeed, the life is unique on this. We don't know any signs of life anywhere else. And as you said at the beginning, and you called us the brothers and sisters, and what science really shows right now that it's true. We all living creatures, from bacteria, plants, animals, they have the same origin. We have the same genetic code. We share with plants even many identical genes, etc., etc. And if you look closer to human populations, like all people sitting here, they're in fact very close relatives. If you make a very simple calculations, each of us have two parents, right? So we have 4 grandparents, etc., etc. If you look at the 7th generations, each of us have 128 direct ancestors. And if we go further back, we have 1,000 direct ancestors, and all these ancestors overlap. So we all are relatives, and it's supposed to be that we have all of people sitting here 3,000 years ago already has a common ancestor. Some piece of genome is common in us, in our genomes here, from ancestors who lived 3,000 years ago. So we're all relatives. That is actually give us some moral and ethic rule that what is very attractive in Buddhist philosophy to me personally, that all creatures are even, and we have to have compassion to all feeling animals, or all feeling creatures. And that we have a little mismatch in scientific approach, because in scientific approach, scientific approach based on necessity and request from anthropocentric view that we need to use some animals for experiments because we need to help to man. Certainly there is a good evolution in view on how we can use the animals. There are multiple restrictions. At the same time, for example, in the United States, there are restrictions on using vertebrate animals. You have to get the special permission to use any single animals for what purposes. but no any restriction for invertebrate animals. Invertebrate. So,
I don't know.
and not only in science and in general, actually ethics in human society, in most human societies, that we can use animals for different purposes. And in scientific view, what is the, how we consider that species have a success in evolution, or what is the progressive evolution for this particular species. So the species that make expansion, territorial expansion, and they have multiple numbers, they supposed to be successful. So what animal species are most successful now? The breeds, chicken breeds, and some cow breeds, the millions and billions animals living in horrible conditions, providing the food for human, under formal concept, they are very successful, and that they are probably most unhappy animals in the world. So the means happiness certainly is not considered in many aspects of human life. It's very anthropocentric vision of our life. So, and that means that the power of Buddhist philosophy could really help in thinking at least about this from scientific view as well. But let me change the subject to a more fundamental question. I think the most fundamental question in biology, not only in biology probably, how the genomic information, just the text in chemical symbols, deployed as a program in such kind of very complex functions or functional categories as awareness, mind, consciousness, etc. So we have just naked information, just chemical letters, and it's somehow transformed in process of ontogeny for individual in individual life, and how it happened in evolution. Because we have many species, animals with no any sign of consciousness, no neural system, no brain, etc. And still they are quite successful in evolution. And at this point, I would consider what happened in evolution from the beginning. How species can be adopted with no any consciousness, with no any knowledge. And in general, we cannot predict the future, or at least when you don't have brain, how the future can be predicted to be adopted in the future, how species can survive. And there is a absolutely amazing convention in evolution. So you can adopt in the future based on errors happening in genome. And the variability is based on errors made by in genome, and therefore in population you have multiple variabilities, multiple tiny variations. That is a source for the future in case of changing conditions. And that's kind of intelligence of nature without consciousness.
레바다 딘지 민교기 양지 제대 마무시오지 프랑스
Good was
저 디네 용되게 됐어.
So,
남시다 시조 계계지 시에 미리 선발로 군주기다 마음이 주도 근데 좀 그래서 다 띵가 좀 봐 제마 들어 잘. 다 이바이네다 리제기 나와 거 유와 마무시오지 되게 선발 리제디 아니 주법디 다치 마음바 근데 용 그래서 슈징 중에기도 시도 좀 맞을 때
So the errors and variabilities, but at the same time, the evolution was going on to creation of what we call now the brain, and what we have now, we can predict the future, and moreover, we can create the future, and thereby we can predict the future. So that is the way for adaptation independent from the errors and from the poles of variations in population. So there are two ways of evolution, and that is of interest, how it was evolved. We are also interested in such kind of subject as how we can transform the behavior. So your philosophy is to transform the behavior by discipline of minding, etc. So we raise the question, can we transform the behavior by specific genetic methods? And this behavioral trait could be inherited, the changed behavioral trait. So for that, you need the specific models. And I just would like to give you a very specific model, very unique models, what we used, and we discussed yesterday a little bit about that. The model, how you can transform one type of aggressive behavior to friendly behavior using the wild animals. So as you know, so the domestication of dogs was going on for 1,000 years for different traits, and you cannot very easily trade the genes which are responsible for behavior but not for any other phenotypes. So in Siberian Institute of Cytology and Genetics, the unique model was created. This model was created during the 60 years, actually. It's 60 years old experiments in farm lab. So what did they do? They decided to select the wild foxes, only for one trait, actually for two traits, for two opposite traits of behavior, friendly behavior to human and very aggressive behavior to humans. They selected for up to 50 generations on these traits. And finally, they created totally opposite trait breeds, aggressive and friendly or tamed foxes. So what we are doing now, we are trying to identify what genes are responsible in the process of this artificial selection, artificial evolution, responsible for changing of this behavior that is stable and inherited now. So, I would be certainly interested to discuss more. We talked about this already, how reincarnation, how the philosophy, Buddhist philosophy, can be applied to modern knowledge about the genes, genome. What we know that all our phenotype depends on genes, on inheritance of genetic traits, etc. Thank you.
시주니가 시샤지 남주들이 간지 농사부터 진짜부터 리니가 로주가 슈슈체제 또 시주가 요건 이게 되게 합보체 다 단단히 디간의 리제 디나노는 리제 거기가 지레 가르치기도 다들 이거는 제레 바이 있으시 다 디단 제레게 지한 남주도 도리야 지딜의 슈제에 대해서 samsung
So answer is I don't know. I think we, through evolution, the non-sentient being, all these vegetables, trees, you see, over billion years, you see, these go like that and survived without consciousness. And with that, the sentient being also, you see, the environment change accordingly. You see, sentient beings, also their way of life also change that way. So in the future, I think next, the 1 billion, I don't think, then the world disappear. At least, you see, maybe few thousand human species may remain. And then some kind of evolution may come. But my concern is present, as I mentioned earlier, a lot of suffering, essentially our own creation. Now that how to reduce, how to change. You see, in order to change or reduce suffering, change our motivation, change our mind. That's my main concern. And after 1,000 years, what kind of world? That's not my business.
Now, our final participant
Right.
is Professor Kaplan. He is a neuroscientist and psychophysiologist. He is professor of Moscow State University.
Thanks. Your Holiness. Yes, I'm a professor of Moscow State University, and my students also are interested in this meeting, of course, and please allow us to express our respect, deep respect to you. And I would like to say, I so many times I listen so clever things here in this around this table. So my brain maybe is not so fresh, and my topic will be very easy, very simple for me, for example. And I would like to, at the beginning, I wanted to say, dear Holiness, but it was my intention. But the consciousness blocks this and say me, no, it's not the rule. You need to get to say that.
What did you do?
Yes, but my consciousness blocks this because they say, no, it's not rule for to say that. You see, of course, I read your biographical books, and I was impressed your story when you was so young, very young. You say that you study the wash, the hand wash, to watch. Yeah, it was very interesting for me because probably this is a starting moment to study the external world, and the next study to study the inner world. So this is, of course, it was very, all your story, biographical story is very interesting for me, and even I make sure that how this the small simple boy from the small village, it's Your Holiness, can rise to so high level of wisdom, This is an example for us, for me also. And yes, I am a neuroscientist, I'm a neurophysiologist and psychophysiologist. In my specific interest in this area is how to get the direct contact with brain. Direct contact.
그래서
Direct contact with brain.
레벨은 태가직 대화 대도시나 근데 지금에는 세서
What I mean, what I mean. Please imagine the person who can't speak after stroke.
yes,
He can't speak and even he has no any movements. How to contact with the area around with another person? And this is a specific problem in clinics. How to get information from the brain by instrumental way. How to get the technology to open the world for that kind of person. That kind of technology we call it as a brain-computer interfaces. I have to say you a simple example. For example, if somebody see on the screen with alphabet, that person may just only look on the screen on the letter, one letter on another letter, and we recording the electrical signal from the brain. It's enough to detect what letters that person want at the moment, and print it on the screen. Next, so that person without speech and without movement can print the text. This is contact with the area, with another area.
다 lun고도 사실 주시. 엔 가서 내가 저. So what are your question? Okay.
No. Questions is whether we could apply such kind of technology for health person to get more thoughtful his intention, his emotion. So how you express my emotion on the mimics, only voice, but how to get impression inside from the deep of brain. Maybe we could use some special technology. For example, in Buddhism, you already have used the technology of meditation to get more deep contact inside. Is it possible to? What's your opinion? Is it possible, or is it has sense to use technology for looking inside of the brain?
가서. 그냥 국도 제재고 시주 가서 로종 대도 가. 좋아. 인 가십시다.
딜리아 아니 미세기다 아주 공부도는 디지얼다 심바 가르쳐야요나 세서
Again, my answer is I don't know. I'm not expert.
Okay.
And then Mushi says, "All right."
Then also we talk about clairvoyance.
Oh. I heard that 1,000 times. I never met someone who have that sort of quality. I never met. But the method, quite convincing, how to develop these things through meditation. But one my friend, now no longer, once he sort of reached deeper meditation, then after that, he remembered past life, several centuries ago, what happened. So when that deeper experience, you see, Kasoda, disappear, then no longer. So such person who have deeper sort of experience of meditation, then also possibility to know future. So theoretically, yes, we can say these things are possible. But among the living people whom I met, once you see one person, you see, as I mentioned earlier. Otherwise, you see, these need a lot of because of many years, a lot of practice through many years. So, I think the field of mind, you see, no limit. According to Buddhist literature and we Buddhists, you see, there is seed of Buddha mind, Tathagata Garbha. And these subtle minds, or say the potential is immense. So we are trying to explore that.
Mm-hmm.
But then you need a lot of time to practice. Then I can easily say, I have no time. That's my excuse.
So it's good news for us that it's theoretically is possible. Let me please present you my book, which is called The Secret of the Brain. This is
good,
fortunately good. It's in Russian. And with the English, some words in English.
Right.
But it's secrets. We don't know what is it.
No.
Thank you.
So since we do not know, therefore we describe secret. If everybody knows, then no longer secret. Nature has its own answer to this question, the continuation and the maintenance of life. Thank you.
Your Holiness, thank you very much for this session and sharing with us your knowledge and deep thoughts. It was very important. Thank you. And
Thank you.
Until tomorrow. Yeah.
See you again tomorrow.
Завтра.
Dear